Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. Back in June, the Denver Nuggets won their first NBA Finals in franchise history after not making one for the first 45 years of their existence. It was one of the longest championship droughts in North American sports before Denver defeated Miami in 5 games. It's kind of crazy because, 45 years of existing, you think they would have gotten there at least once. Plus, they've had some great talents in their history. Alex English, Carmelo Anthony, David Thompson, Dan Issel, Bobby Jones, Fat Lever, Dikembe Mutombo, just to name a few. They'd made 4 conference finals and had never won more than 2 games in any of those appearances until this season where they finally got over the hump there, and then of course won it all. They started off by securing the franchise's first ever 1 seed in the regular season, before proceeding to dominate the Western Conference, losing just 3 games throughout the process, and again taking the finals in a quick 5 games. They were led by Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Bruce Brown, head coach Michael Malone, and of course, Nikola Jokic, who has not only begun to solidify his personal legacy, but also his Denver Nuggets legacy, where he has become the greatest player, in my opinion, in the history of the franchise. He's a 2-time MVP, a Western Conference Finals MVP, a Finals MVP, and the best player on Denver's first ever championship team. At this point, he's considered by most people to be the best player in the entire world, something that seemed almost inconceivable just a little while ago, especially when he entered the league back in 2014. Back in this year's draft, the Nuggets had 2 picks in the top 50. The first one they used to select Doug McDermott, who they would basically immediately trade over to the Chicago Bulls in exchange for Gary Harris, Jusuf Nurkic, and a 2015 second-round pick. A deal that would honestly end up working out really well for them. Both those guys played integral roles in their years with the team before eventually moving on to new locations. The second pick they had was the 41st in the draft, and typically with a selection at this point in the second round, you're going to get lucky if you even get a high-level role player, never mind getting someone who could potentially be an all-star level talent. In the history of the draft, only 22 players taken in the second round have ever become all-stars. So usually this is just a spot where you take a swing on a high-potential player. A lot of times they don't work out, and it's a second-round pick, so it's not the end of the world. The Nuggets did exactly that, taking a swing on Nikola Jokic out of Serbia. And one of the craziest parts about the selection is we actually never saw it happen. It took place during a commercial break, and not just any commercial that was going on during this selection. It was a Taco Bell Quesarito commercial. That's right. Nikola Jokic, the Joker, the future 2-time MVP, greatest player in Nuggets franchise history, and considered by many right now to be the best player in the world, was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial, which goes to show just how impossible his rise was from then till now. With the knowledge that we have now, it's fun to go back and look at some of the pre-draft scouting reports about Nikola Jokic. One report from NBADraft.net said that he needed to improve as a post player and that his upside was limited by his lack of explosiveness and foot speed. Daniel O'Brien from Bleacher Report said that he could be a poor man's Boris Diaw, but that his defense would prevent him from ever playing 30-plus minutes or even starting. Obviously, hindsight is 2020, and nobody could have possibly predicted Jokic becoming the level of player that he is today, but it's just interesting to look back on these scouting reports, see how they compare to his game now, and showcase some of the doubts that people had about him, which Jokic was able to eventually overcome. However, going through some of these scouting reports, one thing that was consistently noticed by scouts across the board with Jokic was his impeccable outside shot and his elite playmaking at the center position, both things that would end up becoming critical to his eventual success. From the first moments that he stepped on the NBA court, Nikola Jokic made an impact in the league. In his rookie campaign, he put up 10 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 2.4 assists in just 21 minutes of action per night, actually starting 55 games for Denver in that first season of his, which is not typical for second-round selections, and he ended up making it onto an all-rookie team. He didn't show MVP potential immediately, but it was clear that he could be a really solid player in the league at the very least. He built on this in his sophomore campaign, earning himself more playing time and starting more games, although he was still splitting some of the starting responsibilities with Jusuf Nurkic, who, as we talked about, the Nuggets were able to pick up in a draft day trade with the Chicago Bulls the same night where they got the Joker. It became clear eventually that they were going to have to choose one of these two guys to be their center of the future, and Jokic at that moment was the pretty clear choice, so they dealt Jusuf Nurkic away to Portland in February of 2017. Now, there was very little possibility they were going to trade Jokic out of the two of them, but it is interesting to think about an alternate timeline where Denver chose Nurkic instead as their center of the future. if Jokic had still progressed to the player that he is now, we'd be looking back on it as one of the worst trades of all time, with Denver dealing away the eventual best player in the history of their franchise for not much of anything, while Portland ends up with maybe a ring, possibly multiple, behind a duo of Damian Lillard and Nikola Jokic, which would have been one of the best offensive duos probably that we've ever seen. But of course, Denver went with the right center for the future and ensured success for years to come. In his third season, Jokic continued to excel, putting up 18.5 points per game, 10.7 rebounds, and 6.1 assists, as the Nuggets just barely missed out on a playoff berth in the final games. He had gone from a solid contributor to a near all-star in a few seasons after being considered a more raw prospect with, again, quote-unquote, limited upside just a few years ago. The next year in 2019, Jokic would secure his first all-star appearance, while Denver would come just a game away from making a Western Conference Finals, which would have been one of the very few in franchise history, losing to Portland out of all teams in 7 games in the second round. Jusuf Nurkic got this round, but Jokic would end up having the last laugh later on. In 2020, Denver finally broke through to that third round, pushing themselves to a conference finals matchup against the Los Angeles Lakers, led by LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The Nuggets put up a hell of a fight, but the eventual champions were too much and took them out in a really tough 6-game series. But Denver was young, and they seemed poised to return to the stage of the playoffs pretty soon. It seemed possible that they could have done so in 2021, especially after they traded for Aaron Gordon at the trade deadline, and following that move, they went 8-0, and they looked like the best team in the league. They were dominating defensively, the offense was clicking. It seemed like that the Nuggets might end up being the team to come out of the Western Conference in that season, if not for Jamal Murray tearing his ACL, which would keep him out of not just this playoff run, but even the next one, while in 2022, Michael Porter Jr. would miss basically the entirety of the season with back issues. These injuries to the key stars alongside Jokic really hindered them over the next few years. But despite the setbacks to the team as a whole, Jokic continued his rise, going from All-NBA All-Star player to an MVP not once, but twice, becoming just the second player to win MVP as a second-round pick, joining Willis Reed. He became the greatest playmaking big of all time, tossing out some of the craziest dimes you've ever seen while elevating himself over 25 points per game with unreal efficiency across the board. He had begun to skyrocket up top player lists as well as all-time lists, establishing himself as a historically great big while revolutionizing the position. There has never been a player with his skill set at his size, doing things that really don't make any sense whatsoever, putting up some of the greatest statistical offensive seasons that we have ever seen. He even became the first player to have a season where he put up 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, and 500 assists. Just complete dominance across the board. But again, with his two co-stars in Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. injured, the Nuggets didn't have much playoff success despite his own greatness. In 2021, the Nuggets managed to defeat the Blazers despite Jamal Murray being out and missing multiple other major contributors before falling to Phoenix in the second round. In 2022, the Nuggets had to match up with the eventual champion Golden State Warriors in the first round, this time again without Jamal Murray, but also without Michael Porter Jr., thereby losing in 5 games where Jokic had unreal statistics, but just didn't have enough help around him. Unhealthy in 2020, the Nuggets made it to the conference finals, but injuries had severely derailed them from making it back or having even a chance to make it back in the following 2 seasons. It was very understandable why they weren't able to do so. I didn't hold it against the Nuggets or Nikola Jokic. A lot of people didn't. But there's also a major group that did hold it against Nikola Jokic, and this narrative began to circulate amongst NBA Twitter people, media circles even, talking heads on like ESPN, that Jokic had been undeserving of his MVPs because he hadn't won in the playoffs, that you couldn't build a championship level team around him because his defense would never be good enough for them to do so, and there were a lot of people saying that the Nuggets would never be able to win a title with Jokic as their best player. Obviously, looking back now, it was a terrible take, but even in the moment, without knowing that the Nuggets were going to win the finals in 2023, it seemed completely ridiculous that you would have this take when we had seen him and his supporting cast healthy once in a playoff run. And that was without Aaron Gordon, who again, like I mentioned earlier, was a big contributor to this team. We had yet to see him, Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., and the rest of the supporting cast all healthy for a full playoff run. So making that take before seeing that was just lazy and weird. For the entirety of last summer, these were all opinions that circulated a lot following the Nuggets' loss to the Golden State Warriors in the first round. But heading into 2023, Jokic had a chance to prove all these narratives and doubters wrong, this time with some actual help alongside him, and as you already know, he did exactly that. Not only did he lead the Nuggets to 53 wins, the second highest total in franchise history, as well as the franchise's first 1 seed, but he did it with one of his best individual seasons yet. In just 33.7 minutes a night, Jokic dropped 24.5 points per game, 11.8 rebounds, and 9.8 assists, coming just 0.2 assists per game short of a triple-double average as a 7-footer on the season, dropping 29 triple-doubles in total, which did lead the league, while putting up a true shooting percentage of 70.1%, which is ridiculous and led the entire NBA this season. Not only was he the most efficient scorer in the entire NBA this season, but he finished the year with the highest true shooting percentage by any player to ever average more than 20 points per game in a season. Amongst all qualified seasons, regardless of points per game, he has the 5th highest mark all time in a year, only behind Rudy Gobert, Mitchell Robinson, Tyson Chandler, and Artis Gilmore, who are all bigs who work pretty much solely out of the paint, while Jokic is out there shooting threes and being the main facilitator for his team. He finished 17th in total points across the league, 2nd in total assists, 3rd in total rebounds. All around, it's one of the greatest offensive seasons that we've ever seen, which is something you can say for all of Jokic's past 3 years, which is absurd. He's truly having one of the greatest offensive peaks that we have ever seen. And with this season, he nearly grabbed his 3rd straight MVP, but just barely lost out to Joel Embiid, who was dominant in his own right and very deserving of the award, even though there are a lot of people who think that this should have been Jokic's 3-peat. But despite Jokic doing all of this while leading the Nuggets to a 1 seed in the Western Conference and looking like the best team in that half of the bracket pretty much the entire year, there were still talks about him being unable to do it in the playoffs going into this year's postseason. Leading into the final weeks of the regular season, when it became pretty clear that the Nuggets were going to get that 1 seed, there were people talking about how the Lakers would knock them out in the first round if the 2 teams matched up, as well as a number of other teams that could potentially end up in the play-in tournament leading into that really crazy final day of the regular season, where we didn't know who was going to be in the play-in and who wasn't. There were also people calling Denver one of the worst number 1 seeds in a while, saying that they were weak and that they could see the Timberwolves knocking them out in the first round. Of course, this was all wrong, as the Nuggets went on to have a dominant run to a title, which featured great play from a number of guys on the roster, but as usual, Jokic was at the center of it all. Over Denver's 20 playoff games, Jokic was legitimately unstoppable, as he averaged 30 points per game, 13.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists, 1.1 steals, 1 block, while shooting 54.8% from the field and a blistering 46.1% from deep. Not only did he average an absurdly efficient near 30-point triple-double, but he also stepped up a lot defensively, holding down the interior as the Nuggets went from a really rough team defensively in the regular season to the league's 4th best defense in the playoffs. Heading into the postseason, the narrative was that the Nuggets couldn't defend anything, and all you had to do was put Nikola Jokic in a pick and roll, and you could consistently get easy points. Instead, the Nuggets held up incredibly well in those situations, and Jokic proved more than capable of holding his own, not just in that pick and roll coverage, but also down low battling with some of the league's best bigs en route to Denver's title. It was truly a ridiculous run from Nikola Jokic, and of course it all culminated in a ring and a finals MVP for him, as he averaged 30 points, 14 boards, and 7 dimes on 67.2 true shooting percentage, despite facing off against one of the best defenders in the league in Bam Adebayo in the NBA Finals. Following this, there's really no more questions people can have for Nikola Jokic. This performance, this run, has seemingly quieted all the narratives, as most people now have decided that Jokic is the best basketball player on the entire planet, an opinion that I personally share. This arc in and of itself feels like a movie script for Jokic. He went from a 2nd round selection that we didn't even see happen on live TV, to winning the starting center spot in Denver, to becoming an all-star, to becoming an all-NBA player, to becoming an MVP, the best passing big man of all time, as he put on some of the best offensive seasons that we've ever seen, to now being an NBA champion and the best player on the planet. It's really one of the most improbable and seemingly impossible rises we've seen in the history of the sport. Yet it's only the beginning for Jokic. The Nuggets are entering this upcoming season as title favorites and seem to be capable of contending for a while with this core. Jamal Murray is just 26 years old. Michael Porter Jr. is 25. Aaron Gordon is 27. Jokic himself is 28. Everybody is just barely entering or in their prime at this moment and under contract for a while. the Nuggets feel like they could definitely win 1 or 2 more rings, if not more, with this group if things fall their way. Along the way, it seems like Jokic could probably rack up a few more MVP awards as well, with the team being good, his all-around production being ridiculous, and the fact that he has a game that feels like it'll age pretty well because he doesn't rely much on athleticism whatsoever. We already have to discuss him amongst the top 10 centers of all time, but if he finishes with 3 to 4 MVPs, multiple rings, the gaudy counting stats that he's probably going to, he's going to have to be discussed amongst the top players ever to play the game, regardless of position, period. I'm really excited to see where his career goes from here. I think he's going to be remembered as one of the best players of this modern era. He's one of the league's most entertaining guys, a true unicorn in the sport. And of course, it all began in the second round back in 2014 during a Taco Bell commercial. With all that being said, I appreciate y'all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. Comment down below, where do you think Jokic finishes all the time? How many MVPs does he get? How many championships can the Denver Nuggets win with Jokic here on the roster? I'd love to hear what y'all have to say. Also, if you have any other players or teams that you want to see me break down over the course of this offseason, go ahead and comment them down below. I'm always open to your suggestions. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.